Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Lind. I'm the CrossFit Planning Director. This is the Elm Street Corridor Working Group meeting of February 9th, 2022, starting at 3:02 p.m. I'll just review who we have on the working group here. We have Tim Davis from the Harbor Committee, Chief Sylvia from the Fire Department to represent Public Safety. We have Mike Sardina, the resident at large member on our group, and Jason Federico from the Engineering Department. We will be joined by our select board member, who's Diane Kennedy. She's just running a bit late, but she'll be joining us as soon as she's available. And then we may be joined by Clark Brewer, who's our planning board representative. So just to go over sort of the agenda and what we're going to discuss today, I will give you a brief overview, 30,000 feet of the project status and what our next steps are. And so we're all on the same page about where we're going. I then am going to turn it over. I want to hear from some of our members about community feedback that people have gotten since our last meeting. Then we'll talk a bit more about sort of grant opportunities and technical assistance that we've been exploring from the staff side that could be potential fits for this project, and then talk about sort of what we anticipate getting for refined cost estimates. So to quickly go over sort of where we are, as I mentioned, we'll get more into the detail, but Jason Federico and I, along with other town staff, have been exploring different grant opportunities to fund this project. As people, and welcome whoever may not be familiar with the project, but this is going to be a multi-phase approach in which currently we've sort of completed what we envisioned as phase one, which was trying to begin public engagement and get to a concept level. We're right now in the scale of fine tuning sort of where we go from here. We know there will be phase two, which will go then towards looking more at design level engineering for the project in terms of roadway improvements. Then it needs to get to even more degree of engineering detail to allow the permitting to go to a construction level design. So there's a couple of phases here before you actually think about shovel in the ground construction of a project, at which point then there's a construction cost that comes with that. So there's a couple of pieces here. We have been looking at grant opportunities for a series of those pieces, hoping to get some fits that would help us. And we're actually at this point, we'll get again more into this later, but we are looking for revised cost estimate details from some third-party engineers in terms of the different pieces that come along with this. So I'm going to turn it to the community members, the working group members in a moment. But first, I just want to note that I also have in this agenda a defined area for public comment and working group member comment. So if anybody has any questions that come up or anything that they want to share with us, we do want to hear your thoughts, and it's really important. There's some members who I know have been members of the community who have been reaching out to members of the working group and who have reached out to me, who may or may not be able to attend today. So we can share that sort of input that we've gotten. I will note that I've been contacted. The Master Plan Implementation Committee and the Harbor Committee are considering submitting support letters for the initiative. The planning board will discuss as an update, and I know the planning board had particularly some interest in the reconfiguration of the triangle intersection area due to the pending redevelopment at the end of the corridor there. So the planning board may comment on that, which we'll submit to the group, as well as the select board, who's ultimately going to be updated on the status of this project. And we also received a letter from one of the residents, the Wagners of Elm Street, that I will circulate along. That was sent directly to the select board, but I'll circulate it as well for this group if they haven't already seen it. So with that, I'm going to turn it to, first I'll go to Tim Davis, and then if there's any other members, Chief Sylvia or Mike Sardina, that want to share any comments that they've received since we last met on this topic.
Sure. Thanks, Lauren. I guess the main thing I would like to offer today is that there were a group of residents of the Elm Street community that had a meeting yesterday. They invited me to come to stop in and explain what the process has been over the course of the last couple of years and how we got to where we are. It was a lively discussion, I would say, and we got a lot of feedback. There were about a dozen people there. I would say the takeaways that I had from it, and of course, this was not a meeting for deliberation or decision making, but it was simply informative. And the takeaway that I had is, number one, the residents generally as a body, are very concerned about the speed of traffic on Elm Street. And many of them have been there for many, many years and have witnessed many close calls, near misses of cars and pedestrians, cars and bicycles, kids on bicycles, and so forth. So that's number one. That was the big takeaway that I had. The second big takeaway was every one of the people that were there were in great support of the design for the intersection of Margin, Cove, Elm, and Border. They all recognize that there may be some adjustments that have to be made as we go forward here, but they really like that for a number of reasons. Two of them were the first being traffic calming. They all agreed that the stop signs at that intersection are ignored on many occasions, and that they like the fact that this would enforce some traffic to stop and to perhaps slow down. The other thing that they really liked was the expanded park that comes from where the new development will be out to where the turns would be at the intersection of Elm and Border, Cove, Border, that intersection. They liked it because the new building will come right up to the property line, pretty much to the property line. And what the park will do is provide a visual softening of that area. They also like the fact that this park now could be used for multiple different uses depending on what the event or the neighborhood would like. So I would say generally that group of people that live there, and I think, as I recall, there are residents from Border, Elm, and Margin were all there, and they all were very supportive of this design. So with that, Mike was also there. Mike, you can comment. Any comments you'd like to add to that?
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, they also were in support of parking on one side of the street.
Yes, yes, and they agreed that the parking on one side of the street would be good. They liked wider sidewalks. They did not care for one of the designs, earlier designs that had 7-foot wide sidewalks. So I think we're now kind of 5 to 6 feet. They like that. There were a number of general issues. We talked a little bit about some of the older designs, which they did not like, and we talked about why we had moved on from them. But in general, I think it was very supportive.
Thank you, Tim and Mike. Chief or Jason, did you have anything to add? Any sort of new information that you've heard or want to share? All right, seeing none, thank you. We're going to move to the next portion of the agenda, which is grant opportunities and technical assistance. So I'll just briefly inform you that, as I mentioned a bit earlier, Jason and I have been engaging with different, technical assistance opportunities or programs that may provide potential for funding for portions of the project. We're looking, both from the streetscape improvement aspect, but also trying to think about how particularly the area down by the harbor ties into a resiliency piece. We know it's a sensitive area. There's the brook there, the harbor, the tide gate infrastructure. So we are looking sort of at all avenues to think about whether what kind of pools of money for grant applications that the state may have available for us. So we have a couple applications pending. We're hoping to get some funding and technical assistance in that aspect. I'm gonna pause and ask Jason then to help me update the group about sort of where we are in terms of where we're going with our the request for information from the third party about our refined cost estimating and sort of the breakdown about the concepts that we've last discussed.
So based on the feedback, I just don't think I'm going to be able to get a decent cost estimate together based on what we have currently. So during the grant process, we got in touch with a consulting company that does estimating at this scale and timeline that we're at. So we're going to ask them to cost estimate the basic one, which is we basically just expand the sidewalk slightly in the corridor. So we're strictly cost estimating the corridor from Brook Street to the intersection, not including the intersection reconstruction, to see what the cost for just making the sidewalk wider and then shifting out and eliminating the parking. So we're hoping to get those cost estimates done by end of February for presentation to the select board as to which direction they want to go as far as the cost is concerned.
Thank you. And then just to add, Jason mentioned that we're breaking down to take a look at that. We also do plan to break down a scope for further engagement and look into the intersection as well. I just wanted to clarify that that's not being left out of the process. We're just looking to break down in sort of more of an a la carte fashion so that we can present this information to the select board. And just to reiterate, we had previously discussed returning to the select board on February 15th due to the fact that we need more time to work with our cost estimators and our different third parties here. We are planning at this point now March 1st, which would be the next select board meeting available after that. Just so we're on the same page for scheduling. I also just wanted to announce, thank you, Diane. Diane Kennedy has joined us, who I mentioned is one of the working group members. Katie Dugan, you have a question?
I do. Just to be clear, the cost estimates that you're engaging from third party are the corridor only, do not include the intersection.
So we're doing both, but we're asking it to be broken out into pieces.
Gotcha. So, sorry, that makes more sense to me. So it's going to be broken down into discrete segments that can be then summed up to a total, depending on whether you want to include certain elements or not. But it will include the redesign of the intersection along with components of redesigning the corridor. Correct?
Correct. So so the way that I've sort of thought about this breaking down is that if we look at just sort of, and I know Joe Coggins is cringing somewhere, but the corridor portion of the project, if you think about, from Brook Street down to where the harbor intersection is, if you look at that portion as like one piece and then the intersection by the harbor as a second piece, if we think about just the corridor for a minute, there's sort of what Jason has put together from a reduced scope and a cost value engineering perspective, what it would be for. There's two ways that he's imagined this. We're looking for those two options broken down for that corridor, as well as a breakdown about what engineering might, the next level for design and permitting for the intersection. Also with the caveat that we know the intersection needs more public engagement, and that while Jason has put forth a concept, there are still more concepts to be chewed over. And, so we need a bit more public engagement around that. So we're looking to scope that out. And then in addition, we are looking for revised construction estimates for all of the above. So there's a couple of key pieces of information here that we're looking to tease out and get a more refined estimate based on sort of the changes that we've weighed. We know that we have ruled some things sort of out in terms of cost estimating, because as we sort of touched on in past meetings, a lot of sort of what you look at in terms of moving the curb line, whether you're impacting utilities or drainage infrastructure, that's where you really start to see the costs go up in scope, because you have that much more that goes along with what, on the alternative could be sort of a smaller, more like for the roadbed, less invasive. So we have ruled some of these things out for the purpose of refining the scale and scope, but we do know that there's still more work to be done about what the intersection looks like. Whereas I think we've sort of narrowed out the two options for the corridor. There's less of a sort of public engagement piece for that portion for the scope. Does that make sense?
We did rule out early on, and the neighborhood group wanted to consider was burying the utilities. And we basically, as a committee, ruled that out because of the cost. It's something we could always revisit, but that was an expensive add-on that we early on put aside.
Yes, exactly. That's a good example. So, so that's where we stand. We've got a lot more information forthcoming. What I would like to do in terms of next steps for the group as well is, while we're eyeing March 1st for a return to the select board to give an update, I would like to convene the group, and I'll poll you. I'm hoping for 2 weeks from today, which would put us at February 23rd. I'll just have to confirm that that works for everyone. And of course, that'll be another public meeting like today, open to whoever wants to participate. Because I'd like us to get together and have an opportunity to review that material and get our plan together for what we plan to bring to the select board on the 1st.
Lauren, is there any idea of when we can actually get together live? Has that been considered at all?
It hasn't been something I've gotten a recent update on. So unfortunately, I don't have information to share. I know that we're virtual for the foreseeable future with a plan to turn to at some point to whether it's hybrid or in person, but I'm sorry, I don't have an update today.
Okay, well, I think we're getting closer to that point. From what I hear from various medical experts and community leaders, we're getting closer to that point, and that certainly would be helpful. There's a lot to take in when you're looking at these plans, so it's helpful to do. But we will do the best we can. We'll muddle through.
Thank you. All right, so before we we'll have an opportunity to come back to member comments for sort of parting thoughts before we adjourn, but I want to turn it now to public comment, because if there's anything, any questions, any comments that folks want to make, we want to hear from you. So first, I see Mike Barclay has his hand raised, and I'll just let you know, I'll try to see it in the order that I see them come up. I'll do my best, and then if you want to put anything into the chat, feel free to do so as well.
Hi, good afternoon. Just a quick question. The meeting of the Elm Street residents that was held, is that just a select group of residents, or was that something that was extended to all residents of Elm Street?
I think it was one of the residents gathered people together. It was not, I don't think it was an exclusive group. It was just one of the residents gathered everybody that he knew together and invited them to meet.
I'll just state, I can't speak to that event. That was not a town sponsored or organized event. It was just something that I was made aware of.
Okay.
Joe Coggins.
Yeah, Mike, if I can comment on that, I had the same question Mike Barclay did when I got an email from Tim, because Tim and I had been communicating over the last couple of weeks. When I did show up, I was not surprised that the majority of them were the people that are neighbors that ring the harbor from the bridge basically up to Summer Street, that really hadn't been involved at all in the communications or these Zoom meetings in the past. And they were there for two reasons, and I think Tim will confirm this, that they just wanted to be brought up to speed on what the Elm Street neighborhood, as opposed to corridor, was being looked at. And they were also there to have a community conversation about the potential changes at Atlantica and that wharf, which Tim then informed them that this was not the group that was involved with that. But I think that was the dual purpose. So it was nothing nefarious. It was nothing behind the scenes. It was just that group of neighbors who were concerned about what was happening at their front doors.
Thank you all for that. I see Ralph Dormitzer has his hand raised.
Well, Lynn, thanks for having me. I have a couple of basic comments to make about the process by which you're actually engaging the public, okay, in this. And then second, some specifics about the plan itself, which most people do not have any knowledge of in the town of Cohasset today. So let me talk about generally what I think is going to ultimately be a problem for this project, as it has been for every other project I have been involved in for the past 15 to 20 years. It really is the spending of money on plans for which there has been limited public engagement and for which people ultimately, when they see what has been actually done, reject those plans. And the town will have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars only to repeat it finally to come to a design that people really will accept. So what is happening on this design now? Today, for example, you haven't shown any new design. So most people who are new on this call don't even really know what you're talking about. So number one, there is no design in most people's mind. So they don't really know. And many of our friends have said they aren't even aware of this project, as there are so many working groups on so many topics in the town, that in fact, there is no way to know. You would have to know where in the agenda schedule on the town website to find this, and then you would have to know why you would want to see it. So the first thing I will say in terms of process is, and maybe Tim has alluded to this, you need a public meeting. And you need an advertised public meeting, and you need it before you spend more money. You don't have public engagement now because the nature of how you're doing this by Zoom and by agendas published in the town website is not to engage people. So we have been through this before. And usually what happens if there is public engagement, you do get comments, and people are often quite polite in receiving comments, but often nothing comes of that. And again, we spend money and we spend money and we spend money. And then we have to spend money more because it's rejected either at the town meeting or at the selectmen's meetings or somewhere. So that's where we are now. You need to have a public meeting and you need to show what you're talking about. Number two, with respect to the details, you have heard what people have said. Tim has told you what people have said who apparently are in the corridor or in the Border Street area. And I'd be delighted if you want to share the screen, or you don't want to. It is not supported. That is, speeding or accidents are not supported by the data straight out, and I can show you that data if you want to see it. It has come from the police department, who have maintained all that data. And quite frankly, I don't see the police department is weighing in on this, who in fact are the people who in fact are the host and keeper of all that data. So if you wanted to talk about design, certainly you've done a much more improved design with respect to Elm Street itself, with one glaring, I think, error, and that came up in the last meeting. And although there's no picture here for anyone to see or anyone to understand, is clearly that in the case of where you put green space, because people wanted green space and trees as their number one objective, you put green space adjacent to the street, because we have done in almost every case in the town where there were streets wide enough to have green space, that green space was adjacent to the street and the sidewalk was inboard of the green space. A good example is, in fact, North Main Street, which was just redone. And it is exactly how that's done, that in fact, trees and green space are adjacent to the street and the sidewalks are inboard. Now you've created a design where you put the sidewalks outboard on both north and south sides of Elm Street. So what you have is basically an asphalt inboard, sorry. There's an asphalt continuum from the border of the North Street sidewalk across the entire street itself, including a parking area, to a sidewalk on the other side, creating essentially an asphalt continuum instead of having any green space interrupting it. And yet what people wanted was to actually increase the actual, I call it charm of the street, was the words used. And in fact, you have examples throughout the town, and whether you want to look at Pond Street, or you want to look at Sawyer Street, or you want to look at North Main Street, we've always had green space to the outboard side next to the street. That is, the green space is adjacent to the street, and sidewalks are inside. Why we're changing this all of a sudden after years and years of that continuous practice, I don't understand. I truly don't. But anyway, I brought that up on Elm Street. I believe you've left the sidewalk adjacent to the street. So now you have a continuous asphalt strip, edge to edge. Okay. The other is, of course, the design in the cove itself. And irrespective of what people think has happened there are no accidents there. There was one accident over 5 years, which happened at night in the rain. And if you want to see that data, you gave me the screen, I'll show you that. Or if you want to talk about what, in fact, the speeding is, you will find that all of the data associated with it puts speeding as not significant, both at the 85% level and at the 95% level. And I could show you that data as well. So the justification of all of this potential traffic calming, or what I'd be more inclined to call it traffic interruption, which is what it really is in fact not justified by the data. Now, that's all I have to say. I am only pleading with you. Take this to the wider audience, show them what you're going to do. Don't just declare where you're going. You will, in fact, ultimately revisit this one, because at some point or other, boards will weigh in on this one and the town will weigh in on it, because it is a capital budget item. It's an advisory board item, and it's finally a selectman item. And then finally, it is also a town meeting item. So in not including people guarantees that at some point you will revisit this if you go forward and spend money. I'm sorry to be so abrupt on this, but I've been through too much of it in the past, and I know better than most people how badly these things go over time. Thank you. Thank you for hearing me. I know it's hard to hear me. So
I will.
Thank you. Could I just make a few points and then I'll turn it to Tim? I
Okay.
just want to make a couple of clarifying things. Ralph, thank you as always for your comments. I know you've expressed several times your discontent with the public process here. This has, I will be honest with you, it's been a difficult public process because we've been having to do it in the midst of the outfall of a pandemic. We unfortunately did not have an opportunity or an option to have in-person meetings. We have been doing our best to supplement with virtual across all boards and committees, not even just this working group. So I just want to clarify that. While I too wish that we could have had more of a robust in-person component to this, it unfortunately wasn't an option that was presented to us while we were going through this. But with that said, this was, to the best of our ability, we advertised it the same way we would for an in-person program. This was, we reached out via, we went a butters list. I worked with the assessors list, all the information of residents impacted by the area. We, had outreach to the select board. This originally, as you mentioned, getting back to your process about how this goes through the different processes, this started with select board charging a working group of the master plan implementation committee to go forward with this project and begin this. So this has been a public process. We have had, though it hasn't been an in-person component, we have had widely attended forums, participated polls. We've heard from residents. We've heard differences of opinions throughout the process, which is really important because, as we know, these are important projects. There is no simple answer. You're never going to make 100% of the people happy, but we have had constructive feedback and the best of a public process that we could given the circumstances. To your next point, you talk about the money. I know this is really important to have a better understanding about what we're spending so that we're doing it prudently and to the town's best interest. It is important to some degree, though, that we do need to fund a next portion of this so that we can continue to work. We're doing our best in-house. Unfortunately, we don't have the bandwidth to do this level of design and engineering in-house. We need to source out to an engineering company. And I will note that Brian has been doing a wonderful job at supplementing for some of these conceptual areas, but we really need to get to the next level and understand, and that we've discussed with our DPW director and our town manager, that we know we need to outsource. So we do need to contract individuals to move forward with that. Point 3 about the landscaping and the sidewalk design. One piece of it is that the level of landscape design, that is a detail that is typically follows in a process that you get into the real sort of more detailed portion of the landscape aspects once you have figured out what your concept and layout is going to be. So you don't have to keep sort of wasting time and money and expenses talking about different concepts about landscape when you haven't even really figured out what your layout of sidewalk to roadway is. We know that that's coming. We know that that requires public engagement. But to your point about the sidewalk design, about why we've located an option where the sidewalk is contiguous to the street, that's in response to a community that asked for that. We've heard both sides. We have interest in both sides. We need to be able to present information to address both of those concerns. So that is why we have done that. And then in addition, there is a funding piece of it as well, a concern with maintenance and things of that nature. And then last, the data portion, that is also a point that you've made in the past. And I thank you for your concern about the portion. I think again, this is a point that we are hearing sort of disputes on both sides, and we cannot, from a town perspective, ignore that there is a portion of residents and community stakeholders who do feel that safety is a problem. And while, I know that you said the data's not there to support it, we do have data that does support a certain degree of speeding and, disobeyance of traffic rules and regulations. And between that and the perception of safety alone, we know that this is a goal of the community to make this a better, more walkable, safer area for all users. And the sheer fact that there's a portion of the community that feels it's dangerous tells me that we know we need to do something. So, we're working towards that answer. And I just wanted to just point that out, that we're not running through this process, not caring about these things. It's a complex issue. And as as I mentioned earlier, you're never going to make everybody, there's no one size fits all answer. So I thank you for raising these points. I just wanted to add a couple of, comments back to that. And then I'll just turn it over. I know Tim had raised his hand to make a point.
I'll just add to that. Thanks, Lauren. You covered much of what I wanted to say, but the very fact that Elm Street has been a conversation in the community for many, many, many years is indicated by the fact that it became a number-one priority of the Cohasset Master Plan and a number-one priority for the Cohasset Harbor Municipal Harbor Plan. So it has been discussed for many, many years, improvement. So if anybody in the community is surprised that we are looking at improving Elm Street, I'm happy to have a private conversation with them. It is clear that this is an issue for the wider community. It's a very important issue for the Elm Street community and the Harbor community. I would be very happy, Ralph, if you have studies that are other than the ones that I've seen that show that there's no problem with speeding. I'd like to see those studies. The one that I saw that was commissioned by Cohasset Hospitality Partners was a very, very specific for use that they paid for. I don't believe that is really can be extended to what we're talking about here. But if you have other ones, please share them with me. I'm happy to review them. I think we should put that one to bed because the neighbors are very concerned about traffic and safety there. The other thing is I do think that for something like this, having a public in-person meeting is very helpful if we can ever do that. I don't know, can we have a non-committee sponsored community meeting where you voluntarily come? And I mean, is it possible? Because these plans are, when you stretch them out on a table, going all the way from the town to the harbor, you can really see much better than seeing them on a screen. So if there's any way to do it, and Lauren, I'll work with you, and if there's any way we can do that, if we can have members of the community sponsor a meeting, I'm sure we could figure out a way to do it.
Let's connect on this in ways that we might address having an opportunity for people to view large size plans. I have some thoughts.
Okay, that's great. I see Suzanne Wadsworth had her hand up.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Okay, I just have a couple of comments. The first one is at the west end of Elm Street, where parking will be on the, I guess will be on the north side of the street. Is there going to be an elimination of the 2 or 3 parking places in front of the bank, in front of Cohasset Savings Bank, Hingham Savings Bank, as it is now? It looked that way on the map, that there wouldn't be any spaces.
We're not touching that part of Elm Street with this study.
Okay.
Thing, I believe it. Oh, I'm sorry. Hello.
Yeah.
I was looking at the maps that were attached to the plan. Okay. My other comment is I strongly prefer leaving Cove Road just the way it is. Cutting off a portion of Sydney Square at the west end. It's according to the map that I'm looking at now. It's a very, very short, straight across road, and I believe it has a little green thing in the middle. Is that right?
Jason, are you able to share the plans?
I'm in the car now. I can't, sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll try to join from my other computer.
All right, you see where it's cut? At the end? Would be on the west side, and it looks like there's a little bit of green space
I'm listening, yes.
dividing the lanes. Is
I
that
think
correct?
green space is called open space / green space. That's a traffic island to divide the
Okay,
two.
the traffic island. Anyhow, that new configuration looks to me a lot less safe than leaving Cove Road the way it is now, especially with a sidewalk going right across. I don't see any advantage in eliminating Cove Road. I've said that before. It seems to work just fine. It's good for traffic, and it seems to accommodate emergency vehicles better than this little short thing would do. Quite frankly, I don't see the point of going to the expense of changing something that isn't broken. That's the end of my comment.
So
Thank
Suzanne, may I ask you a question? Or would
Sure.
you be most in favor of no changes to the intersection?
Yes, I would.
Okay, I just want to understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's working just fine. I'd hate to see Sydney Square destroyed or put in this short little street, because I don't think it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. I don't know where the problems, I don't know why, other than the fact that the new development might be abutting Cove Drive. But for the rest of the people in town, I think it works very well. I use it a lot. So I would not want to come down Margin, go to that little short thing, watch out for people in the sidewalk, go across people that are going east on Elm Street, and then have to merge into traffic, whatever there might be, on Elm Street going towards Border. It just seems to me that a better traffic pattern could be created. Finally, what are you going to do with the snow there? Is the island going to be big enough for plows? I don't know the width of those two roads, nor do I see it being a good spot for bicyclists. It just looks very narrow, that's all.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have any comments? Ralph has his hand raised again.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't know what way in order to share this data, which came from the police department, but I'm delighted to share it. I don't think I should share it solely with Tim. I think that makes no sense. I think everyone should see this data. It is very specific, and it's over several days, and it's very specific to the exact amount of traffic that flows through that Cove's Elm Street, Border Street intersection. And it gives you the percentages of what speeds people go at. And it is very clear. You need to see this. You cannot reject it, and you can't say we're not talking about something done by Cohasset Hospitality Partners. This was done by the police department for the very purpose of determining what, in fact, is the speed going through that intersection. So why that has not been shown, and I cannot do this. I could show you my screen if you want to see that, or I can get it out to somebody, but I can't find everybody on this screen and send it to everybody. Somebody has to make this available so everyone sees it and there's no conflict about what it says.
Ralph, if you want to send anything to me, I can make it publicly available. I know you have my email address. You can email it there and I'll make it available. We did have information. I know we had speed data from the police at one point. I'm not sure if it's the same date range that you're looking at, but if you could share with me what you have and I'll make sure that everybody gets it.
Okay, now the question really for me is there's two things here that I think need to happen. One is for everybody on the call at all times ought to see not only that data when you talk about it, this is not just qualitative, you've got to get quantitative finally. And number two, you need to show your designs. People are talking in the air over what they don't see. Jason is on a car and nobody can share what in fact is here. So anybody who's on this call who hasn't seen it before doesn't even know what we're talking about. So again, I go back to these meetings are not working for the general public who need to have some input on this thing. So I don't know how you're going to do that. But moving forward, spending money and not having that meeting, and this is a waypoint you're at right now. You've got designs and you're going out for engineering and costs. This is a waypoint. Normally you make a decision based on the best input you can get, and right now you're not getting the best input. If I'm one of the few people who are discussing this, then you've got a problem.
Thank you. No, and I hear your feedback, and I do apologize that we can't share it today. This is one of a variety of meetings that we have recently over the plans that have not changed. We have them available on the website. I am on actually a different computer. My computer that I'm typically using broke down before you can actually, Tim and Chief were witnessing it, and Jason unfortunately is in the car. So I do apologize that we're not able to share them today. Anybody, we have them available. I'm happy to share them. We can share the recordings from previous meetings. That has not changed since the last 2 times that we've met. What we're looking to do is work on cost estimation, which has taken us some time because of dealing with third parties. So again, I hear what you're saying. If anybody has any questions, please reach out to me directly. I'm happy to assist you. I've heard from many of you on this call already. We've communicated in the past. We're working to try to make this as best a process as we can. So thank you for the criticism and feedback. Does anyone else have any comments they'd like to share? Brian, host.
Yeah, first of all, I apologize. I missed the meeting 2 weeks ago. That email was received, but somehow it got by me. It just strikes me listening to this call that there's a lot of debate around the speed issue. And I guess one suggestion I'd like to throw out is that, setting aside design alternatives and opportunities to improve Elm Street, there are many reasons to do both. I personally don't see speed as one of them until we at least go through the process of experimenting with the posting of a lower speed limit through the corridor, which could be a profoundly inexpensive solution if speed, in fact, is a problem. The posted speed limit signs are very effective by the ballpark, and I think they would be very effective if we posted them here as well. I understand we have a sort of a townwide beautification approach of not posting speed limits unless they're different than the townwide limit. But if we have a speed issue on this corridor, we should post signs. And if we need to post a different limit than the rest of the town in order to feel justified in posting signs, then we should post a different limit. I personally find myself speeding on Elm Street almost always. And it's always the same pattern. I pass Fleming's, I'm driving carefully and slowly through town, recognizing that it's densely populated. And as soon as I come up the hill before the police station, the switch goes off that I'm leaving town and I can accelerate. And it's not until I crest the hill and see the police station that I remind myself that I need to slow down. So I think of, a few speed limit signs on this corridor could deal with that issue and kind of eliminate that circular argument that I think is going to plague this discussion going forward. I think there are lots of reasons to beautify Elm Street, possibly even reconfigure the intersection. I just think the speed calming is easily addressed with a couple of signs and maybe some enforcement. Maybe a sensor that posts your speed as you go by to remind you. They're just easier ways to do it.
Thank you very much for the comments, Brian. We got a note in the chat. It's a question from Mike Barclay. He said he had to jump to a work call, but the question was, we used to receive notification of these meetings by mail. For the last several meetings, there's been no prior notification. And I just want to clarify, the mailings went out to the abutters for every forum, every public survey that went out. Every time we have a working group meeting, they're public and open to the public. We don't do the mass mailings for them. I don't have the staff capacity nor the sort of funding in place to put out a mass mailing for every single working group meeting that we have. With that said, there is an opportunity for folks who are interested to sign up for notifications anytime a meeting agenda is posted. You can pick which boards and committees you're interested in getting that. And every time one is posted to the public town meeting calendar, you'll get an email letting you know. So if Elm Street Master Plan, Select Board, whatever boards you're interested in following, you can do that through the website for notification. Diane?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on general on these public meetings, and this all started with master plan, where we were combing over plans and maps and envisioning things, and then we hired I think it was it Woodard and Curran? Who was it? Was it the
MAPC.
MAPC to then subsequently to conduct a public hearing process and in the initial stages of this Elm Street corridor group. So I feel the frustrations probably more than any of you going to 5 or 6 public meetings a week. There's nothing better for a whole host of reasons than being in person. And I already texted somebody to see when we think we're going to be opening up to that. So I feel the frustration. I also want to let you know that the select board, just in general, has spent a lot of time talking about communications. And because the truth is, in this particular case with Elm Street Corridor, these meetings are probably more well attended by members of the public and not me and Brian and Katie and Tim and Mike, who are at many, many meetings throughout the weeks. This really has had really robust public input, which is much appreciated. But the select board has prioritized communications. We're actually going to hire somebody to manage communications to make sure that we do the best job we can getting information out to people through various channels, because not everybody's on Facebook and et cetera, et cetera. So I feel the frustration. I've appreciated this particular group because there really has been a lot of robust public comments. And, just know that it's definitely on our radar to do everything we can to do a better job going forward with general communications. So thanks.
Thank you, Diane. Does anyone else have any comments they'd like to make? Chief Sylvia? Chief?
Having a little bit of an issue here.
Oh, we can hear you now.
Just as the representative of public safety, I just wanted to.
You disappeared, Chief.
Sorry, you remuted.
Here we go. There we go. So I just wanted to remind everybody, and I am the sole representative for public safety, and I don't do this in a vacuum. So obviously I speak to the police constantly and Chief Quigley constantly about these issues. 2 points. One is that remember that the Elm Street corridor starts at Brook Street. So it starts in the village and goes all the way down to the Cove. When we talk about speeding and we talk about studies and we talk about everything else, there are 3 distinct areas that we as a committee have kind of chopped this into. There's the section that comes out of the village and gets just past the firehouse. Then there's the middle section. And then there's the far end of the Elm Street corridor all the way to the east. Anecdotally, and I don't have studies and I don't have anything else, but what I can say is I've been a part-time resident on Elm Street for 42 years. And the eyeball test is that people travel too fast on that road. Doesn't matter if it's the time of day, the day of the week, or what season we're in. People travel too fast. Now, Elm Street is no different than a lot of other streets. I happen to live on Forest Ave. 30-mile-an-hour speed limits on Forest Ave haven't slowed anybody down. It's a nightmare. The police, unfortunately, do not have the bandwidth or the manpower to patrol all of these streets all the time. Right now, they're in the process of trying to slow people down on Main Street by, and I'm sure all of us know this, right by the Common, by the flagpole. They are constantly writing tickets. Has it helped? I hope it has. But that's the one piece of this. And then as far as speed goes, as I said, I'm a part-time resident at Elm Street, a couple days a week when I was a shift commander for years, and then my daytime back and forth to the firehouse. I've spoken to the residents of Elm Street that live down there. Their concerns are exactly the same thing. And you heard Tim mention it early at the front end of this, that they've witnessed things that need to be addressed. Now, I know that Chief Quigley is, and I'm not going to speak for him, he's a big fan of traffic calming measures because you don't have enough people on the force to slow people down on a constant basis. In other places, they use such things as, in quotes, sleeping policemen, AKA speed bumps. From a public safety standpoint, as the fire chief, I'm not a big fan of those because they tear up the front ends of my 30,000-pound trucks. So the bottom line is, what we're trying to do is look at as a group, and I hope that I'm speaking for the majority of the group, what we're trying to do is look at some concepts here, and that's where we are. There are issues that people wanted to see addressed, and from a conceptual standpoint, we're trying to come up with some concepts. And I appreciate the fact that this forum isn't as open as it could be. Unfortunately, it's the best we've got, and I applaud Lauren for all the work she's tried to do to bring this thing forward and be as open and honest with everybody as she possibly can. So if anybody wants to talk to me about what, again, the eyeball test, please do. If not, please reach out to your friends and neighbors in the Elm Street neighborhood and ask them what they think. And I think what you're going to find is going to be very surprising. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Chief. So I see Lauren Wagner has a comment.
I mean, just quickly, as a resident of Elm Street with 3 little kids, I've seen myself more than 5 times this year, the school bus be passed by speeding cars on the street in the morning. The police were super responsive, came out, patrolled it for quite a while, and that helped deter it, but it happens regularly. I don't have a study to back that up, but I saw it, witnessed it myself multiple times this year.
Thank you, Lauren. All right. If anybody else has any other comments, now would be your time. I'm going to quickly just let you know in terms of next steps. I am actually, I'll ask the working group right now if you could check your calendar if 2 weeks from today at the same time works for our next group meeting. And if so, I'll plan, I'll schedule, I'll let everyone know. I'm gonna look into where we might be able to print out some large format plans so that people can come and look at them. And I have some thoughts, but I need to do some logistics planning. Once I have that squared away, I'll email the community group that I have at least access to let them know, and we'll put out through the channels that people are welcome to come take a look at that, because that I think might be sort of an in-between feasibility in the meantime until we get some clarification about when we can start in-person meetings again. And I'm also going to just email our larger group about how to stay connected, because I think there's, folks who are now sort of in between email groups. I have a really big community group, and then I have a group who've just been sort of following along in the most recent pieces of it. But I'll get some information out to the larger audience about how you can stay connected, like how I explained earlier, getting agenda notifications. If anyone has any comments, they want to submit a letter for the working group or to pass along to the select board in terms of the project, you're welcome to email me. My name is Lauren Lind. You can email me at llind, LLIND @cohassetma.org. You can also find me in the planning department on the planning board office webpage. So I'm happy to get your comments and share them with the process. I think that's all we have on our agenda for today. We've gotten through everything. And I just want to thank all of you, as always, for all of your time and your participation, because ultimately, at the end of the day, whether we're staff, volunteers, elected officials, or just interested members of the community, we're all here for the common goal of trying to make the community a better place. And I just want to thank you for that. So without further ado, I don't see any other questions or comments, hands raised. I see Diane.
I just want to say thank you, Lauren. You're really terrific.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. I will, working group members, 2 weeks from today, I didn't hear any naysayers on that.
Yeah,
so,
the 23rd.
All right.
That's good. That works for me.
All right, everyone. So I'll be in touch more formally, but I'll see you same time in 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Good night.